live at NunPub. This is a panel learning how to co-design. I'm Carla Kopp, and let's just start off introducing ourselves and talking about our favorite game mechanism to include in game design. I could start, and so I'm Carla Kopp. I run Weird Draft Games, Galactic Raptor Games. I'm a game developer, designer, publisher. I run a game design live chat every Sunday called the Game Design Live Chat because I am terrible with names, but we'll get back to that fact later on. And I write a blog that's at weirddraftgames.com/blog. As for my favorite game mechanism, I like to include like a little bit of pressure luck in like every game that I make. So, what about you, Sarah?
Yeah, I'm Sarah Graybill. I'm a designer in California area. I also work in the board game industry full time. I work as a project manager at Panda Game Manufacturing, so I can't get enough board games. And I've co-designed a few games, a couple that were released in 2019. And then one that's coming out next year, or I guess this year now, 2021. And my favorite mechanism to design with, I really like designing co-op games. That's my favorite. I don't know that's exactly a mechanism, but I pretty much like anything with co-op, and especially set collection. I think I generally tended to gravitate towards set collection.
Okay. Hi, I'm David Bruglia. I work with Weird Draft Games sometimes when I'm available, hopefully more. That'll be happening more often this year. I am a designer also on the West Coast in California. My first game design is on pre-order right now, should be released this year, and that is actually a co-design, so that's cool and topical. My favorite mechanism design are probably public goals, hidden goals, whether those are during mid-game or end-game. Big fan of that reveal when everyone thinks you've lost and you flip your hidden goal and you take the victory with 3 extra points kind of thing. So that's me.
So, well, that is just wonderful. So let's get this started with why even co-design? Like, what are the benefits? Why do you like it, Sarah?
Well, for me, I co-design with my husband, so that's been a really good way to strengthen our relationship and sometimes strain our relationship, but mostly strengthen. But it's a fun activity to do together. But really, it's because there are lots of strengths that a co-designer can have, my husband especially, that I do not have, such as graphic design or being able to throw together prototype stuff and make it look really good. That is not a skill that I have. If it was up to me alone, everything would be on scraps of paper, which is totally fine. But I think having cool graphic design know-how helps even those early prototypes really look good and really be readable and user-friendly for the players. So I would say, yeah, just having somebody else that you can rely or utilize their skills is really beneficial. And likewise, I have skills that my husband doesn't have. You know, I'm a little better at understanding the table, observing players, you know, not just hearing what they're saying, but looking at their body language and, you know, kind of interacting with the player space is definitely where a lot of design happens for me. And I think having a partner, one or more co-designer, can really help that process, just because you each get to bring different things to the table.
Yeah, I definitely agree about having like different people bring different things to the table, where you have your own strength and you're really good at this thing, so you do it, and you're just making something better together. I also like having another person because it's just nice to have somebody else to like have an opinion, like an extra set of eyes. Like if we go back and we're like, well, I thought this playtester like was doing this. Like, what did you think? Like, did you notice anything else about it? Like,
Right.
it's like an extra set of eyes on the project. But I think my favorite part about working with a co-designer is that there's somebody else there that really motivates me to actually work on the project.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
someone else there that is relying on me to do this, so I'm going to do it because like we're in this together, and I just go so much faster with a co-designer. Well, because they're also doing part of the work as well, so there's less work, and I'm more motivated to get it done. So
Yep.
it just works.
That's a great point.
What about you, David?
Yeah, I want to add on to that. I think it's great, especially for someone like me who, when I'm working on something myself, it's easy for me to make excuses. I'm one of the worst to be like, yeah, I'll take care of that later. All of my solo designs start in January when a convention for playtesting is in September, and it isn't until August that I actually begin any sort of heavy work on it. And it's not for lack of time, it's just for, I'll get to it later. So I think that's probably the most important aspect, is having that other person or persons being relying on you to get your portion done, keeping you kind of in check, but also motivated too. I love when people think the things I do are cool, and so that's just another person or set of persons that are like, oh yeah, that is cool, or this is how it could change and it could be cool. So I definitely agree with that, and covering supporting my many weaknesses in game design. I'm still very green, very new to designing, and I am the type of person that can easily admit that and know that I need to be covered in those areas. And also, it's just much more enjoyable, I think. I was talking earlier about, it's kind of like for me, like playing a single player game versus multiplayer. It's just there's time for single players, but I like socializing, and I like working with other people. So I definitely feel it makes it much more enjoyable.
Well, and to your point, David, it's you mentioned, having somebody to bounce ideas off of and somebody to like validate some ideas. I think that's another benefit of co-designing, is it's like having built-in playtesters, right? Because you don't have to just design in a vacuum. You can iterate and immediately share it with somebody, or at your designated time, share it with somebody. But you kind of have that like really alpha early playtesting even before it gets to a prototype or shareable state.
Yeah, good point.
And like you can trust them. Like you can't trust a lot of playtesters, like
Right.
because they want to like put it in like their own direction, but like your co-designer, like you do want to go in their direction. So
Right.
it's just so much easier. You can trust them and you can just rely on them. So
Right.
Yeah, having someone who has the same vested interest as you in something is definitely very helpful.
So when has been the best time for you to try to find a co-designer?
So like I said, I've mostly co-designed with my husband, so that's been very easy. We just designed from the start. But I think as far as finding a new co-designer, if I were to work with you, Carla, or you, David, I think those relationships can develop kind of naturally at playtesting events, when it's 1 o'clock in the morning and you're tossing around ideas, or if somebody just says their journal of like, hey, I've got a game title here, or I've got a mechanism here I really want to do. And really early, I think, is my preferred time, because you can kind of, when it's just a lump of clay, it hasn't been shaped into anything yet. You're not trying to fit into anything just yet. You're really creating it from the start. That's my preference of when in the process to do that. And I think like when in time, I think meeting other designers at conventions, or since we didn't have conventions in 2020, doing it remotely, reaching out to designers that you like and admire or care about, or offering to play test games. I think that's a great way to find co-designers and find somebody who has those strengths that you don't have. And yeah, I think some of those processes will come about naturally as you develop connections with people.
I definitely agree on finding a co-designer early on. Whenever I've tried to like take one of my prototypes that is actually like real and physical and like playable
Mm-hmm.
and get a co-designer for it, like the other person just doesn't care as much as I do.
Right.
And the like relationship eventually just fizzles out. But like if we're both like there for like the ground process of like what is this game, or
Right.
like we're all like invested at the very beginning, like that's always worked out so much better than trying to get somebody in there like later on.
Mm-hmm.
What are your
Yeah,
thoughts, David?
yeah, having that vested interest, that's a good point. It's a lot easier to ensure that they have it if it's earlier on, as opposed to just kind of coming in the last minute or somewhere in the middle. So that's a good point. Uh, for for me, I would say I think I guess for me it's when, because I was new to the industry, it was just kind of a natural thing for me. Like maybe because I've tried to design solo games, but I also or solo, but I've also had friends to bounce ideas off of. And we'd meet kind of weekly or bi-weekly and talk about it. So I guess I was sort of co-designing. In an instance, I was kind of running everything because I was the expert as far as our group of no design experience. So, but I guess I was still co-designing in that aspect. So I think a good time is you're trying to. I think it's a good way to break into the industry, and so I think that's a good time to find a co-designer. I would also say if you're starting to potentially maybe lose a little interest in a project, obviously if you're stuck, if it's in a rut, and like you said, it could be hard to bring someone on that to have that same level of interest. But if you can strike gold and get someone like that, I think that's a great time also to bring a co-designer on.
Sarah kind of talked about this a little in her answer about how to find a co-designer. So let's talk about that a little more. For me, it's just been like people that like I really enjoy playing games with, and like if I enjoy like the same kinds of games as them, like then I might enjoy like
Mm-hmm.
actually co-designing with them. And sometimes it's just been like I've been doing like live chats or like talking design with people, and like just hearing somebody else like say like a really cool idea, and afterwards I'm just like, hey, that was a cool idea, do you want to do that idea, because this is what your idea, like these are the ideas that I got from your idea, do you want, like, are any of these like really interesting or cool or good. So yeah, it's basically the same thing that Sarah said, like just talking game design with people and like realizing like if you have anything in common with them. That's been where I've found all my co-designers. David?
Yeah, I feel like for me the best way, it's kind of been I've been lucky, and I've had uh, so co-designers who aren't in my immediate circle of friends have sort of reached out to me, and I think that's just from being helpful with playtests, showing your interest in playtests, having good feedback, or at least having thoughtful feedback, um, uh, being a sort of genuine person with feedback. You know, you're playing a game, you're not just there just, okay, let me just get this over with, like having pretending that's someone who's related to you and you really want them to succeed, so how can I help you the best. So I think for me is a lot of that was just trying my best to be a really good play tester, and then networking and make connections, being helpful, and it all kind of just started to happen organically, just being around a lot. It was definitely a privilege to go to all these conventions and be physically around people and meet them. But I think that helped a lot. And I feel like showing that you're helpful and have great feedback, and are just a good person, fun person to work with. I think that's a great way to find be a co-designer or find other co-designers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, David brings up a really good point, where like people reached out to him. Like I reached out to David because like he was so good at playtesting, and also like as you've noticed in this panel, like he doesn't have an ego, like he doesn't like emotions get in the way. Like he's really good at being like, well, he keeps saying that he's green, but like he's designed a lot of games. He has a game coming out right now, which means that he's been designing for years. So what are some other things that you both look for in a co-designer?
Well, as I said before, I kind of look for somebody that has skills that I don't have. So whether that's graphic design or art or I think I also, the types of games I design are mostly like family friendly or abstract strategy, kind of light medium games. And I think it can be helpful to have somebody who likes the same types of games that you like, so that you're both, trying to shape the lump of clay, to use that analogy again, into the same thing, rather than one person wanting it to be something more complex or something be lighter, whatever. But I think another good thing to look for is somebody that you can be honest with, somebody that you can and that you would accept honest feedback from them. Somebody that you're not going to be embarrassed or hurt or anything like that if they give you honest feedback, and likewise, because I think that it's such an important part of that relationship is just really open communication. It is like any relationship, right? Where the really solid ones are the ones that are based in truth and honesty and being having the ability to be frank when it's 1 o'clock in the morning and you've just been playtesting games all day and dealing with the public and you're both exhausted, but you need to get something done. Like, you have to be able to trust and accept what that person is saying in a kind way,
Yeah.
Yeah, honest feedback is like the thing. Like if you can be honest and just say what you mean and like not have the emotions attached to it, like when I say things to David, it's just like, hey, this is, it's good, but like let's just make it better. Like it's not, I'm not saying anything about David. Like David is a great designer and a great person, and like if you can just work with somebody that doesn't have all those emotions and can like just hear what you're saying, like that is an amazing experience. And I second the like looking for somebody that has things that you don't have. And I've worked with a variety of co-designers, and each one like I choose for like a specific reason. Like I think it one part about this is being very maybe open with yourself and honest with like what you are as a designer. For instance, like I do a lot of spreadsheets. I'm a spreadsheet designer. I like math and balance. So that's my high point. But like I am not as good at like naming or like coming up with like lots of like just filling like, oh yeah, what should all these characters' names be? I don't know. Finding somebody that like is good at that. Like David is amazing. I give him a spreadsheet, he fills it in like so fast, and it's like, whoa, we got a card game now. Or doing things like I'm not so emotional. I am very like cut and dry and like as I said, spreadsheet. So like sometimes when I'm like I was designing like a party game, and I was like, well, I need to find somebody that is really good with their emotions. So like that's the kind of thing that I looked for in that project. But just like being very open and honest on what your strengths and weaknesses are, and being able to like identify those things in another person is really good. David, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think for me, first and foremost, it's finding someone that you want to work with regardless of the outcome. So almost like the designing is a game itself, right? Someone you'd want to play a game with. So if we're designing, if working with Carla, it's great. And then if our design crashes and burns, we had a lot of fun doing it, and we're going to learn lessons from it. And it's going to, no matter what, will still be a positive experience regardless of the outcome. And I think that's, for me, it's I want to have fun designing games failure or not, success or failure. And so for me, it's important to find someone that I enjoy working with. So when any of those situations happen, that it's still a good experience. Definitely agree with Sarah, someone that can kind of support what skills you lack or don't have, or just weaker in, kind of balancing you out, or the group out. I for my immediate circle of friends, it's definitely a question of availability too. Everybody wants to design in our group for the most part, but I find that the ones who would be really good at it or really into it are the ones that unfortunately don't have the amount of time to do it. So not that I would, that'd be my decision for choosing someone else. It'll just be a longer process. But if you have the choice of two different people that you want to work with, definitely the one that can sort of have the time. I only say that because that's one of our main issues before I started working with Carla. And actually, we probably could have figured it out with, this is pre-COVID, so if we would have been smart enough to start using Tabletop Simulator beforehand, that probably would have been great. But lesson learned, like I said. And but I think overall, for me, it's about having fun and working with someone that you just enjoy being around and working with and stuff. So.
And I definitely agree with all those points. Like, the positivity is like so important for me. Like, because like it's fun. It should be fun. This should not be a job. Well, one, because game design doesn't pay that well. So
Right.
if you treat it like a job and like you just hate yourself, you're not gonna get anything out of it. But also the time factor, like being able to agree on like how often and when, and like being able to meet that cadence like is so important, because like if you can't meet it and then you're just like, well, I didn't do it again this week, and like it starts putting in like those feel bads between both of you, because like you don't want to let down your co-designer, but like you also want to be able to like rely and trust on them as well. So like just like being honest and like being able to like meet those time commitments is like really important as well.
It's like going to the gym, right? Where, I mean, and now we're not going to the gyms anymore, but it's like exercising, where you need to just build it into your routine or prioritize it. And the longer you don't prioritize it, the harder it is to get into it, the harder it is to make it a priority. So I think somebody that values that the same way is really important. Or somebody that will, we were talking about motivation earlier. If I don't want to go to the gym, if I don't want to do game design, I think having somebody else to say, no, we are going to do this, you are going to commit to this is really good, is helpful.
Yeah. Or even if you both just despise it, having that other person let's just go be miserable together.
Yeah, let's go be miserable together. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And then you might start off miserable together, but like usually like if you have the right personalities, you're like, oh yeah, like this is actually kind of fun. Like we're fine. We're doing something and it's gonna be good, and let's just push through and get through the stupid part, because like game design isn't fun 24/7. Like there are like you get to a point where you just have to push through and it's not so fun, and having that other person there just makes it so much easier, because maybe like if things work out really well, you have two different parts that are like the hard part. So like that other person is really motivated right now when you're not, and they can help you out, and then like you can be really motivated when they're not, and it just works out so much better.
Yeah.
So what's a good way to split the responsibilities of each co-designer and what they're going to be actually doing with the project?
I think, just to go back to the strengths question is, figure out what people are strong at and let them volunteer or ask them or have a conversation about giving those responsibilities to them. I would say, yes, definitely benefit from the strengths of your co-designer, but realize just because they're strong at it, they might not always want to do it. So I think if you have a co-design, listing out the responsibilities and having people kind of volunteer for what they're most motivated to do is a great way to start that discussion. And then when it comes to fine details, making the spreadsheet. I would never volunteer for making that spreadsheet. I might map out my designs differently, so I think letting people volunteer, and if something seems imbalanced, then having that discussion, saying, okay, what responsibilities can I take off your list? Or are there things on your list that I can do foundation work for that makes your list easier? But first, I think just identifying the responsibilities for one is huge. And then, starting with the ones that people volunteer for first, I think is a great way to split up those responsibilities.
I think you made a really good point where you're like, just because something is somebody's strength doesn't mean that they want to do it 24/7.
Right.
Well, and also, like asking them like what they find fun, like what is your fun part of game design, because maybe their strength isn't the part that they find a lot of fun in, and like just having this discussion about what they like to do and what they're good at, and like this can also change, so like having this conversation come up like every 6 months or like when
Right.
it needs to, is like a really good thing to do. It kind of plays into, Tam asked, have you had an experience where you and your coworker, now TTS is in the way of the question, it's fine though, and your co-designer have different levels of enthusiasm and or time, and how do you manage it? Like, I mean, just being upfront and open and talking about it like every so often. Like sometimes I get really busy. Like December and January are a lot of accounting for me from my like a business perspective. So I just
Mhm.
have to be like, hey, I have stared at so many spreadsheets. I can't do it. I can't physically do it. Can you do it this week? And I will like do something for you in the future. Like I'm just dead tired, and I'm going to be like a horrible co-designer this month, but I will do something of your choosing like at a later date. Like just
Right.
be honest, open, and like talk about it. Like you should choose a co-designer where you're perfectly okay like being like, "Hey, this is just not my time." And
Right.
hopefully it'll be my time in the future. Hopefully I won't always have a sinus infection, but things happen. But yeah, and I really like Sarah's idea of a list, because like sometimes when you make out a physical list, or like maybe not even physical, like a digital list, you'll realize that one person is doing like a whole lot more than the other, and like you might not realize that before. And that's like another way. Like if you get into an issue with a co-designer and you're like, I'm doing all this work, and you're not, make the physical list and like see and compare, because like if you're not like saying all the things that you're doing, you might not realize that your co-designer is actually doing a whole lot.
Right.
Um, David, do you have any
Yeah.
thoughts?
Just echoing what you both said, I think it is. I think you definitely want to go by strength and interest first, and echo what Carlos said. As time, check in at some point later on down the road, and like you said, because interests change. So if I'm working on the graphic design, if we're both terrible graphic designers, but I'm doing it because I'm interested in it, that could easily change as I realize how terrible I am, and am not improving, and am not finding enjoyment in it. Maybe it's time for someone else to take a shot. And if it's loose enough, and also playing into Tam's question, managing the different levels of enthusiasm. If the group is if you've got yourself in a great group where there's lots of room for flexibility, I think that helps with kind of that waxing and waning interest, right? If neither of us are good at graphic design, like I said, okay, well, I'll do it for the cards, and you can do it for the tokens, and a third person can do it for the box art. Who knows? I think having the flexibility is really helpful, and I think getting yourself in a good co-designing partnership or group is kind of the precursor to that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't have any magic way to split responsibilities. I've been in plenty of projects in my professional career, and it's mostly just been told what to do. So I don't have any good insight into that, unfortunately. But yeah.
So how many co-designers do you think is the right number of co-designers?
Oh man, that's a really tough question. I mean, for me, the magic number that has worked well is two, because to speak to a point David made earlier regarding scheduling, it's much easier to schedule you and one other person than it is things beyond that. And I think that timeline is a little easier. I have done co-designs with 3 people, me and 2 other people, and that has been fine. But I think at some point it just becomes maybe there's too many voices or too many people to want to shape the direction of the game. So in this game that I was working on, it was kind of in this weird space. Is it a kids game, like true, not just a family friendly game, but truly a kids game? Or is it something more sophisticated? And the game ended up being in this weird middle place where like it was too complex for a kids game and too simple for anything else. And we were trying to like shape it and mold it in this direction. And it wasn't necessarily just because there were 3 designers instead of 2 or 1, but I think having more voices at some point can be challenging because it's hard to distinguish that relationship between designer and playtester at that point, when you have so many people. So for me, the magic number is 2. 3 could work in certain circumstances for the right game, I think. But I think 2 is good, and then at that point, kind of view anybody else that you want to bring into the process or to help refine the game, view that as like a developer responsibility and not necessarily a lead designer or a design responsibility. So yeah, that's my perspective.
Yeah, I would agree that 2 to 3 seems ideal. I'm doing CoDesign with 2. I'm doing a CoDesign with 3. I think they're both equally great. They're both equally working well and enjoying both. I've tried it with our physical circle of friends when this all started, or my interest in the designing started. We had 6, and it ended up being. I mean, it was fine. It just kind of quickly became let's split up. Because the idea was to, let's all concentrate on one and work on another, and then end up just kind of just being, well, let's split up into groups of 3 and work on 2 designs, playtest each other's designs, blind playtesting, and it was working for a while. I would say that because we're all close and we're already playing games together, that large group might have worked, probably not ideally, but might have been fine. But then it was just interesting how it kind of naturally evolved into just groups of 3. And it seems from my experience, co-designing a smaller group seems to be ideal, 2 to 3.
I also agree on 2 to 3. I really like 3, because with 3 people, there's less work for everyone. You're more likely to be able to meet. Even if only 2 people can meet, they could still play the game at 2 players. So you can really get a good 2-player experience and 3-player experience. And getting to 4 players is just inviting 1 play tester. So you can get all the core 2 to 4 player experiences really easy without any additional scheduling. With 3, it's nice because you can easily vote on things. If 2 of the people think that this is a good idea, then the third person, sometimes I am the third person. I'm well, I chose these 2 co-designers for reasons, and they think this, so I might as well just go with what they say. And it just is.
That's a great point.
Kind of easy, but going larger than that, going 4. I've tried 4 before. It was early on in my game design career. So it could have been like that was the reason why the co-design didn't work. 'Cause, like, I've learned so many new things since I've been co-designing. So that was part of it, is that I didn't know all those things. But like having four, like we'd get into these circumstances where two of us would want one thing and the two of us would want something else, and it's like how do you break this down? Well, I've learned if you do have like a person that is in charge of a certain thing, that can make it better. So like maybe four can work, but like the scheduling with four people and four voices, and I don't know, it just was not pleasant, and I wouldn't go out of my way to go to four. Two and three is like works really well. Like with two people, like even though you don't have the vote thing that you can rely on, it's easier. Like as Sarah said, like to stay in line, like to satisfy two people, it's 50% easier than satisfying three people. So there's pros and cons with each, but like both of them can work out like super well.
That's a really interesting point about the voting. I hadn't thought about it from that perspective, but having three helps break ties, or helps give you kind of those statistical things that you don't always have when you're kind of in that tunnel vision of design of it is three people's opinions. And yeah, that's an interesting way. I hadn't thought about it before.
So what have you learned doesn't work when co-designing?
Well, personally, I've learned when co-designing, it doesn't work if one person doesn't care about the game or doesn't like the game. I mean, that sounds weird, but if it was one person's idea to begin with, my husband's idea for a trick-taking game about allergies, and it's a game that I don't really care for, I'm never going to be a good co-designer on that game because I don't want to play test it, or I begrudge play testing it. And I'm going to look for more negative feedback than positive feedback. That can be good sometimes, but I think what doesn't work is both people not having an equal enthusiasm about the game for the average. I mean, I think there will be times when you don't like your game very much and the other person's motivation and interest has to carry you. But I think on the average, you both have to, or three, you all have to care about it equally. And I think the other thing that doesn't work is just not putting in the time, like I said, with exercise, you need to think about it like not like a chore so much, but like a task that needs to get done. You need to put it on the list, and not prioritizing it, not thinking about it, saying you're going to do it later, at least for me, doesn't work because I probably won't do it later. So, just making time for it, putting on the list. And I think the thing that doesn't work is just, saying I'm going to do it later.
Yeah. To go further with what Sarah said, like she talked about like not being as interested, but on the other end of the spectrum, if like one person is super passionate about this, and like the other person is just like regularly passionate, like sometimes like that person that's super passionate just can't like compromise, and not being able to compromise on a subject, like, or like give in to like what the other person wants, like if you're working with somebody that like you can't like give and take, like okay, like you got your way on this one, like just let me have my opinion on this part, like
right.
If they have to have their way like 24/7, like it's not an equal partnership, and
that's a great point.
Not gonna like I'm gonna lose motivation if I can never get my opinion in the game. And that's just how life works.
That's huge. Yeah, that's really important.
What about you, David?
Yeah, I was gonna say it. I mean, I agree. Yes, being so I guess forceful with the design of the game. This is what should work. I'm so enthusiastic. This is going to be great, and for reason X, Y, or Z, I really need this in the game. It's definitely not helpful. But for me, also, and for me also, I work better when there is, a project on things like this, when there's someone who's kind of directing the project, but not necessarily I'm in charge and what I say goes. I'm the tiebreaker, like that kind of thing. And more of keeping people on track, just basic project management skills. I think that is one of those tasks that could be when you're deciding at the beginning. Okay, who's great at leading projects? Not necessarily just in charge, but who's great at running things and keeping things on track and making sure kind of are all, being responsible without kind of letting their ego take over or turning into just I'm the boss and things run through me. It seems like that could somewhat easily devolve into that, but I still think for me it's important to have someone that's kind of leading, conducting the entire operation. Do agree with you about the length of time between sessions. That is, I was trying to see, I feel like it's, on one hand you would think, well, if the same amount of time passes between a co-design project and a solo project, well, at least I have my other co-designer who can like remind me of what was happening. But the other co-designer is probably thinking the same thing. And so then you're just in the same situation, or maybe even worse if you were just solo designing, because solo design, you're probably taking notes, and you can flip back to them, and you should be taking notes in the co-design thing. That was the other thing I was gonna say, is not taking good notes, but that's just general, game design stuff anyway. But yeah, I feel, and that's what happened in some of my early co-designing, was just too much time passed because it was such a large group and because we were new also. People lose interest. It's hard to remember where you were, and it sort of starts to not necessarily spiral up cold, but kind of just slowly starts to fall apart, like an old sweater kind of thing. Yeah.
So one of the things that David mentioned was when somebody like has a thing that they just need to have in there, it sometimes this happens, like just somebody is like super passionate and wants something. It can be perfectly fine if they're really honest and open about it. Like if you have your thing and you say it and you don't like just bury it down. So one of the things I'm really bad at is people interaction. I don't get like if somebody is like trying to like insinuate something but they're not like saying it. So like I'll try to like ask a lot of questions and stuff. But like if you care about something and you don't mention it and you just stew in it like forever, like we're gonna not work together well, because like I won't know that you're like stewing in it and angry and being emotional and stuff. Like it's perfectly fine to have emotions. We're all humans, we're not robots, and like acknowledging this is good. But like if you have a thing where it's like this needs to be like this, you need to be able to say that thing with your co-designer and like be able to move forward from it. Because like if we can just talk through it, like maybe I don't care. Like if you have this thing that needs to be there, okay, be happy. We'll do it that way. Like I might have like a minor like, oh yeah, I just thought it should be like this, but like if you have a good reason, let's do what you think, cuz like I want this partnership to work. So like yeah, you're passionate, you care, you get to make the decision. And that's sometimes just what it comes down to, is like between like when you're working with either one other person or two other people, like do you want it a certain way? Sure. If you are willing to make an argument for like 5 minutes on it, convince me. Just we'll do it that way. Like you really have to like really think about like what are you getting out of this? Like working with a co-designer is amazing and they're helpful in doing things. So if they want the game name to be this thing that I think is dumb, sure, we will call it your dumb name and you will do all of the graphic design. I'm happy. I don't have to do the graphic design. You could just like make a partnership like that. But you'll never like know these things if they're not honest and like saying them and willing to like be like, no, really, I think it should be like this. So yeah, like honesty. Like if you can't, like if you're too nervous to say something, that partnership will probably never work out.
Right.
So Raven had a question. Are there any steps that you recommend designers and co-designers take at the beginning of the project to keep everyone on the same page and the design moving forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one thing I learned through the design process is to identify, I was talking about this design I was working on with 3 people, and we couldn't really tell what the game was supposed to be. So I think one step you can do is write down a list of objectives, say like, who is this game for? What is this game about? What weight, how heavy or light should this game be? But I think thinking about the audience, thinking about ultimately when the game is done, who the game is for and what it's about, I think having that written down on paper can help solve a lot of arguments. For one, if something comes up in the future, you can just go back to that and say, well, ultimately, what serves the game best? What serves those objectives best? So I think that's something that can also help us keep things from getting out of control. As we see this a lot in early designers, where they're like, they want to put all of their game design ideas in one game. It's everything but the kitchen sink, because they just want to get their voice heard. They want to make this possible, and so everything goes in there instead of it's serving what's the game best. So I think like taking time to think about those objectives and agree on those objectives, because maybe one person wants to make a game that's like a heavy war game, and the other person's like, no, I want this to be a light family game. I want my 7-year-old niece to be able to play this game. But identifying those boundaries early helps really keep that on track.
Mm-hmm. I really second that, like having the big list of like what is the audience, what type of game are we making, and also like what are we going to default to. Like I really like thematic games, so it's like if I ever get into an argument, it's like, okay, well, we default to theme. What is the thematic choice in this? And like just talking through all that can like just make the argument go away, because like you can't really argue like I've actually argued out of my own opinion, because I'm like, okay, well, we decided to go back on theme, and the thing I'm arguing doesn't make sense thematically. Well, right. Yours makes so much more sense thematically. We'll just do that. And like, it makes things easy to have like go back to the list and what do we want the game to be, even when you're not having an argument. Like sometimes like after a playtest session, I'll just be like, okay, yeah, like this is what we wanted the game to do, and this is what it's doing, and that's really cool. Like, yeah, we're doing it, we're like on track. Like it's a good like thing just to look at every so often, when like even when you're not arguing, just to be like, oh, okay, are we doing the thing that we set out to do? Like, do we need to update this or
Right.
like change it in some way? Like, just to make sure like everyone is thinking the same thoughts and doing the same things, because yeah, like human language is so hard. So like just trying to say more words to make sure that we're all like happy and good is really important.
Yeah.
And for getting the design moving forward, what I really like is having something on the calendar, like either on a weekly or a bi-weekly thing. And sometimes like I do have one project where I always cancel the meeting every week, but it takes a physical action for me to go cancel that meeting, and I think about it and I send that person an update. So I guess like
Right.
even though we never meet, it still is oh yeah, I have to go update this person on the project, and we just talk about it like via text instead of actually meeting. So like it meets the same goal.
Right.
It's just like I guess I prefer text, so we don't need like a full formal meeting. But like having something on the calendar, like I check the calendar every morning, and I might see like, oh yeah, we have this testing tomorrow, so yeah, I have to get ready for it. Like because like
Yeah.
I don't know, pandemic days are hard. Like days
Yeah.
can be weeks or minutes or whatever that they are. So like having something that is like constantly reminding me like, oh yeah, this is happening. I'm making time for this thing in my life, and like getting ready for it. So like there's going to be progress. Like as soon as I started putting like every one of my projects into the calendar, and like even just 1 hour a week, you can get so much done in 1 hour a week. Like you are going to finish at some point because you're making progress every week. If you just wait for it to happen naturally, like you would think it might happen. You might think like, oh yeah, I like David enough, I'll reach out on a regular cadence. But like we all get like so like I don't know, distracted by our daily lives, especially like when we can't see these people that we really like. So like having some way to remind yourself that hey, the project exists and hey, I should work on it because I like it. That's really important for me.
Yeah, I don't have much more to add to that. I think you both made great points. Setting up a kind of plan at the beginning. I love that you said, let's set a default and let's make it theme. And if we ever have an issue, let's change the theme, and we'll both or we'll all agree that that's what we'll default to until the theme changes. But in that case, then we'll default to that new theme. But if you agree on something that you can default to, I think that's a great idea. For kind of being that tiebreaker or just that last ditch. Hey, here's a reminder of what we're trying to do. I think just as proper project planning at the beginning is going to alleviate so many issues that you're going to have later on. I've seen that in my professional work. Sometimes we just try to do projects on the wing, and things get lost. Things get lost and thrown to the wayside or forgotten about, and it's so easy for that to happen. So I definitely think just having that outline, same thing you would do for a paper or something you're going to work on at work. I think a lot of like kind of work experience stuff can be pulled and used in game design and co-designing with the group.
So go on, Sarah.
Oh, I was just going to say, I really like your idea of putting something on the calendar. It's giving yourself a deadline is what works for me. And I like the idea of putting it on a calendar. Is either scheduling your time to work on it or scheduling your time to neglect it. Scheduling your time to be like, oh, I have neglected it, but having that reminder, that's a great way to do that.
Scheduling the time to neglect it. I mean, it somehow has moved the project forward. Like
right.
The project is moving forward a lot faster since I did this, even though I acknowledge that every week it's not happening.
Right.
But whatever works for you. Well, I think that's another thing is like we're all different people. Like I really like to communicate via text because it's just not as stressful. Like having a certain time like to do video chat or whatever is like not my favorite, but also I'm willing to do it like because I've acknowledged that like one of my other co-designers, Dan, like he does not do text chat well. Okay, that's just who he is as a person. I've tried to change it. I can't. Like we can't change other people really. We can like help them improve a little on different things. Like I know David certainly helped me become a better designer, but like he can't change base things about me. So you shouldn't try to change base things about your co-designers and try to meet them halfway. Like I do a voice chat with Dan every week because it moves things along, and that's just how life is, and we're different people, and that's fine. But being able to meet people like halfway and just also like identify those things, like he was trying to do the text thing, and like just being able to like look at our process and being like, this doesn't work. It's not like either of our faults. Like there's just something inherently wrong with this. Like let's try something new. Like let's try to improve this in a different way, or try just something else, and like maybe the day's wrong or whatever, but like constantly, like maybe not constantly, but like every so often, like looking at the working relationship and seeing like what is doing really well and acknowledging that, and what isn't doing well. Because you always need like we're humans. Language is hard. Like make sure to take the time and be like, hey, David, you're doing great. Like this graphic design definitely has improved. You have great font choices. Like David has great font choices. But, I think that's partly because his partner Heather is a graphic designer and is like, yes, this font. But like we all have these things in our lives. Like, well, Heather's not a thing, but like she is an aspect of David that makes him a better designer because she might just walk by and be like, use this font.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
And like just being able to acknowledge that, like, hey, this is like one thing that makes David like fantastic to work with, and like voicing that every so often, like, hey, you might not like the graphic design, but it is done and it works, and I appreciate that. If you're not like willing to like just say like random compliments, like, I mean, when you're having a meeting and like you don't have anything to say, like maybe just try to say like something you like about the other person, or like every so often, because like what I've found is like people don't do that often enough, and they might get like surprised when I'm just like, hey, you're an amazing person, just wanted you to know. Like that doesn't take any effort from me, like like if I'm already talking to somebody, like just ending the conversation with, also I love working with you, like that's just another couple lines of text. It's not so hard. It doesn't like destroy your own productivity or life, but it can definitely make like the relationship better, because like I don't know why like us as Americans are just not like giving compliments, but like, it can just make things better, especially if you have to like go and say something like bad or something. Like if you've always like said good things, like I always try to end like playtests with, thanks everyone for doing a great job, like we're getting further, we're progressing, this is going well. That means like every so often when I'm like, hey, I don't think this is working, like they know that overall I really do like working with them, because I've said it like multiple times. Because human brains are weird. We focus on the negative, so like you have to make sure you say 9 times as many positive things so they remember that. Like that's not anyone's fault, that's just how humans are.
The bad sticks out more than the good as far as memory goes, and so I completely agree with you. I think those kind things that you can say, and they don't have to be, they don't have to and shouldn't be insincere. You should find things that you do like about the process, or that you like working with them, or hey, this is getting better. Like that's still a compliment, even if you're not saying this is good, this is great. If you're saying this is getting better, I think that's still a positive comment and helps keeps that relationship strong, as you said, Carla, and keeps the motivation going. It's easier for me to be motivated if I do turn in something to my co-design partner and they say, wow, this looked great, or this worked really well, thank you for doing that. Like that makes me want to go back and do it even better the next time, or keep doing it.
Well, like Sarah said, like thank you. That's another one that is so easy. Like, thank you for doing this. Like, well, you could even say thank you for doing it so I didn't have to. Like, and that can remind yourself, like, why it's so cool to be working with a co-designer, because it is great every time they do something so that you don't have to.
Yeah, for me, definitely that. Thank you, this helps. Like, that keeps me motivated. That makes me feel like what I'm doing is important and matters. It contributes. And it's very simple, and it's not a lie, assuming it helps, right? It's you're just stating a fact. Thank you, this helps. And it just does so much. And I think it's very helpful.
So any last like general co-design like tips or things?
No, nothing specific that we haven't touched on. I think really just I think finding somebody that you like working with, that you can be honest with, and that you can accept honesty from, is good. And as you talked about a lot, Carla, is recognizing your own strengths, recognizing your own weaknesses, being honest with yourself, that counts too. And I think that's that will make you a better designer, period. Co-designer, solo designer, whatever. I think recognizing your strengths, and being able to accept that from yourself will make it easier to move forward, because it makes you easier to accept feedback and all those things going forward. So yeah, I think the other thing I'd say is just keep doing it, keep experimenting, keep playing around, because I think chances are good that you'll be able to find something that works if you keep experimenting, keep testing it.
For me, like, something that's really important is being able to distance yourself emotionally, like not to attach like so many feelings to your project. Like, if your co-designer said something, and like not to feel bad, like not to take it personally. And one way that I found to like be really good about this is like logicking through like your emotions. Like, you might, like, we're all humans, we feel emotions, and that is fine. But when you're like feeling these emotions of like rejection and stuff because they didn't like the cards that you updated or whatever, like going through this whole like, okay, well, I really like working with David because he does do things and I don't have to do things, and he provides this other like point of feedback, and like just go through all the things you like about co-designing and working on the project, and then you can just feel like the emotions like go away, like once you like actually tell yourself all these things, like, oh yeah, there are a lot of great things about working on this. Just because he didn't like this one update I made, that's fine. Like, it's the game, he wants it to be better. Like, your co-designer is not there to like just torment you. They want the game to be good and great and wonderful. And so like if you get through these emotional things and you're like, oh gosh, I hate co-designing, I just want to choose what I want, I just want my opinions to be what happens, like go through and like all the reasons why co-designing is fantastic and your co-designer is fantastic. And usually like by then I'm like, oh yeah, obviously I should just let them choose this thing, it's fine. Because like there's all these benefits to it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Obviously those are all good points. I don't know how much I have to add as far as super great tips. I would say be prepared to kind of level up your ability to be patient. This is an entirely different person. This is not just your head, your inside, the voice in your head you're working with. This is an outside voice, and it's going to have different emotions and different thoughts. Some of them will be wrong, some of them will be right. So be ready for that. So definitely be patient, be flexible. Again, different person, different life. But also realize that because you're now co-designing, you're going to have a higher level of responsibility because now there's 2 people or 3 people counting on the work you put in. And I think doing those things will also help you become a even better solo designer. You'll become more patient with yourself. You'll be more flexible and understanding of yourself, and take more of your own personal responsibility. So my general tip for co-design would be to do it at least once if you haven't, because I think it's just another skill set to improve the skills you already have. It'll add something to you, and then it'll just improve the rest. So definitely for it.
And David reminded me of another thing about why co-designing is just great, is like I've learned so much from working with co-designers. Like, I am definitely a way better solo designer now since I've worked with co-designers, because like when you listen to other people, like you just get better at playtesting, but like you see how they do things and their methods that are different from your own, and you can learn and grow that way. So co-designing, it's just great.
Yeah, I think
I had one other tip I thought of, which is to play published games with your co-designer, or do other fun things with your co-designer. Maybe take some time to not just have it be all about the game, because if it really is what brought about that relationship is wanting to make, or what's a benefit of co-designing is making your relationship better, is do some fun things with that co-designer. So play published games together, do an escape room together, go on a walk together, do whatever you can to help have some activities that are not all about the game, because that I think can help make that relationship even better.
Yeah,
That's
well,
great.
and to go further with what Sarah said, like sometimes I just really like to play published games with my co-designers, and like then talk about those published games
Yeah.
after. Like, what did you like? What were the cool things that you noticed about this game? Because like you're two different people with two different perspectives, so like just hearing what somebody else really likes about a game can like really make you work better together and give you more insight into who they are as a person and a game designer.
Mm-hmm.
If people want to reach out to you after, how do they find you? Sarah.
I'm on Twitter at the Graybillion, and which is my last name, but with ION at the end. And I'm on Facebook, and otherwise I try to go to as well in the normal times. I try to go to as many conventions as I can. So, and I usually can be found in the playtest area.
For me, my Twitter is at Weird Drafts. I have a blog. I'm putting the link in the chat, but it's weirddraftgames.com. Oh, it's actually /Carla, because I don't know where my blog is. Apparently, I didn't get enough sleep last night. But I write a lot of things about game design there, and I also have a Discord that's at weirddraftgames.com/Discord. So come chat with me about game design all the time, or ask questions or whatever. David?
Yep, I'm on Twitter at David Bruglia. It looks like 2 L's on this screen, so it's Bruglia. I am also on the Weird Draft Games Discord, so come by and hang out and chat with us. It's very fun and interesting.
Well, thanks everyone for being here, and thanks to my amazing panelists. I hope you have a great rest of your non-pub.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Carla. Thank you for hosting.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.